Hey all, DNF Duel, who's next, is a fighting game with a diverse cast of combatants. But to put everything into perspective, it should be mentioned that this game is a spin-off of a series called Dungeons and Fighters, a game series that was established back in 2005. DNF Duel has also been available for a while. It was released in 2022 for Steam and PlayStation, and now it has finally been ported over to the Nintendo Switch. In other words, this is your chance to fight opponents in handheld mode, and the game's developers have certainly not skimped on options. You can play online, compete in ranked matches, compete in a tournament, experience story mode, or play in survival mode. But despite all the opportunities that are given, the question must be asked, is this a game worth $50? Is this a fighting game with a high entertainment value? In this review, I take a closer look what this is really about and how it's experienced on the Nintendo Switch. If you want to support my channel, feel free to subscribe. So let's start with the basic setup of the game. You can choose between 15 different heroes and one more that is unlockable. All participants have their own personal characteristics, which can be good to know when fighting, but even though all heroes are fundamentally very different, there are also many similarities. But let's look at some of the differences. The Ranger is an example of a character that utilizes ranged weapons, in combination with boxes and punches. The Berserker uses a giant sword drenched in blood, and with that he can perform various melee attacks that deal damage. He also has a pretty cool special attack where he strangles his opponent. Another character is the Enchantress, who uses a doll. She can command her puppet to start attacking the opponent. She can send away meanie teddy bears as well as turn her opponent into a green teddy bear. As you can see, these are three examples of three completely different characters with unique abilities, but there are similarities, and it's about the control scheme. What is fundamental for all heroes is that you basically use the same settings regardless of who you play as, and the design is very simple. You use common attacks by pressing the A button in combination with left, down or up. Then there are attacks that need mana. These attacks cannot be used to the same extent because your mana pool is limited, which means you have to keep an eye on the mana meter. If the mana runs out, you can become exhausted and have to wait until it's refilled, but the control patterns are similar to those used for the common attacks. B in combination with left, down or right, or just B. So basically, it feels like everything is very straightforward. At least I haven't discovered any incomprehensible combinations that are almost impossible to implement. Most of the attacks feel very easy to use actually. In addition, we have the movement patterns themselves. It's possible to dash away from the opponent, you can jump and attack, and it's possible to parry. So basically, there is most of what is needed to be both offensive and defensive. And if you would like to know more about what abilities are available, there is an exceptionally well-made command list that explains in various ways what your character can do. It's basically divided into three different parts. First, the description shows the abilities that cost mana, then you can see combat abilities that don't require mana, and finally an overview of overall abilities. Along with the combo list, you get to see a short animation of each ability, and also a description of what the ability does. This is without a doubt one of the best descriptions I've ever seen in a game. So the combination of the visual effects, the explanation of what the ability does, and the clear description of the button combinations make this a very good overview of one's collective abilities. This is how a tutorial should be done. It is very educational and easy to follow. It's also possible to customize the control as you prefer. It seems there are two presets, type A and B, but it's also possible to manually set each button. I also want to point out that it's possible to use the D-pad on the Joy-Con. I know some players prefer to use the D-pad instead of the left stick, so this option is available. So let's discuss how it feels to play this game online. Now, it's important to point out that the game is newly released, and maybe it's the case that other players have a different experience, but what I want to highlight first is that it was relatively easy to get a match started. I played online for quite a while and usually had to wait about a minute before entering a new match. However, I cannot answer whether I met players from other consoles or via PC, but basically it worked smoothly. I never had to wait very long. What raises questions, however, is why I had to face the same player several times. If it's the case that the player base is very limited, if it's a coincidence, or if I only met players who bought the game for Nintendo Switch. I actually don't know. and maybe we have to wait a while to be able to get a bigger pool of players, as the game eventually becomes more popular. But what is worth noting is that online mode may be of interest to those who like to measure their strengths against others, and have a desire to rise in the rankings. Yeah, there is a ranking system, and as long as you have a good connection and the desire to compete against others, this can prove to be an appealing way to play. Then there is a game mode called Free Battle. This is a good choice if you want to meet your friends, but there is also the possibility to face the computer. This is actually an excellent choice if you want to get better at managing your character. Here you can learn all the abilities in peace and quiet, and also set the difficulty level. In this way, you can get a real challenge, or the opposite, an easy opponent to train with. Here you can also choose a course, and unfortunately, I think there are a little too few courses. I don't know if there are any unlockables, because otherwise there are 8 in total. However, I have to say that the ones available look just fine. Another option is survival mode. This is about knocking out a series of opponents without being eliminated yourself. There are 3 levels, to fight against either 15, 30 or 100 opponents. After winning a fight, you can upgrade your character, for example gain more defense or strength. It's also possible to restore one's health. But the twist is that everything costs credits, so you have to be relatively careful with your choices. The upgrades are quite expensive, so it can be smart to make rational decisions. I actually thought that this was a pretty nice way to play. There is a nerve in successively knocking out opponent after opponent, while having to think about one's own survival. You only have one life, play smart, take no damage, and knock out opponent after opponent. For those who want to get to know all the fighters in depth, there is the option of choosing story mode. I don't think the narrative feels that engaging, to be honest, but it serves an important purpose to introduce the different characters. But the story is broadly about exploring different worlds by finding portals. When a hero finds a portal, they usually have to fight against an opponent. And this pattern continues until you have gone through all the chapters. In the end, it's all about unlocking the game's secret character. So there is still value in playing through story mode. What is also worth noting is that although the story can be perceived as streamlined, each character has their own path, so it's actually an ambitious project to get through all the character stories. DNF Duel is a fighting game that flows very well on the Nintendo Switch. I tried playing both docked and handheld, and regardless of what you choose, I think both ways deliver. I haven't experienced any performance issues. I've never seen any crashes, nor do I feel like there are problems with a low frame rate. Overall, this feels solid, but the big question that will determine if this game will last in the long run is the online play. Playing against others is arguably the biggest draw of this game, and it requires a player base to work. We simply have to see over time how it develops, if the game dies by itself or will flourish and have a hype that lasts for a long time. But in summary, I think that DNF Duel is a game that could possibly appeal to a lot of people considering all the options available. There are so many different ways to play this game. But on the negative side, I have to mention that the game's narrative feels somewhat weak, and I would also have liked more courses. Right now, there are only 8. It should have been twice as many. On the other hand, this game is bursting with nice animations and cutscenes. So when asked if it's worth $50, both yes and no, you definitely get a lot for your money. The developers have made sure to create several different game alternatives, and many work very well and are quite entertaining. Personally, I like survival mode. There is also a rich variety of characters that all feel unique. But as I said, the story and the lack of courses means that maybe we should wait for a discount. Feel free to subscribe to my channel. I review new games every week. Have a good day. See ya!